Hi, my name is Greg Moore and I'm the mayor of the city of Port Coquitlam. I was born and raised in Port Coquitlam and now I'm so proud to be the mayor of this wonderful community as we celebrate our 100th anniversary.
Port Coquitlam is special and unique. I think I like the term a boutique city.
And I can remember growing up and there used to be a sign on the other side of the highway for Metro Motors and that said the population of Port Coquitlam was around 15,000.
You know, I have memories of the city being much smaller than it is today. We've grown a lot in the last 40 years.
When we came out here, we were living on Coast Meridian Road and it was all bushes, no lights, well waters that sometimes run dry.
There was one street light.
Street lights. They were so few and far between to start with.
And it wasn't always turned on. I think they forgot to turn it on. It had to be done manually.
We were living in the bushes and there was a lot of wild animals, cougars, bears, skunks and raccoons.
My house has been through World War I, it's been through World War II, it's been through floods, it's been through earthquakes, it's been through trying times, but that's the thing we describe Port Coquitlam the most, is we have tenacity here.
I think that small town charm is really unique in the Lower Mainland.
You've got City Hall, which is old and beautiful and used in a lot of movies. And then you've got Lee Square, which has been completely redone and it's neat and a little bit more modern. And then you can just walk a little bit further and you've got parks and trails.
We have a really unique situation in that we have a main downtown ride. It is a couple of blocks long, it's the center of town, and you can go through there and we have little parks and plantings along Shaughnessy.
For me, that's what creates the small town charm about Port Coquitlam.
I mean, we're quite unique in that we're surrounded on three sides by rivers.
We are basically surrounded by water. So all of the early settlers, of course, arrived on the water.
Our city was defined in the early days by the potential of being a port off of the Fraser River. That never panned out.
So for our forefathers, it was really important that the word port was in front of the word Coquitlam to emphasize that we are surrounded by rivers, that we are a port community. And I'm sure we're not building ships anymore, but we have tugboat companies and fishing companies that are on the water.
My family has a three-generation history in Port Coquitlam at the end of Pitt River Road, and we were always involved in marine functions, tugboats, commercial fishing, and sawmilling originally.
The rivers are more of a recreational pursuit and a place to walk your dog, not so much a point of food source or travel anymore.
I remember the salmons that were spawning and they were red salmon.
We don't have the fish in the river that we used to have. When people say you could walk across the river on the fish, it's almost true.
They just filled the river. Yeah, it was quite a sight.
We're quite fortunate out here. Along with the rivers, we have a lot of foreshore that brings in a lot of wildlife. There's a lot of bird life.
My brothers hung out down on the river, actually the Pitt River. And they used to fish, and then they used to have the hooligans that would wash up on the shore, and that used to be a big thing, going around collecting them.
Within our city, we have a number of forest reserves, the High Creek Forest, lands that were put aside in the early days and preserved for longevity, and I think that's going to be a real benefit going forward for our city.
The Coquitlam River was very much a part of our life, always.
We have the highest amount of park space per capita compared to other municipalities in the Lower Mainland.
You never know where you were going to be able to go and swim, but down at the end of Fraser there was always a nice spot.
In our case, the Pitt River, and playing in the mud along the edge and finding the blue clay areas in the waterfront.
Well, I can remember one time when my girlfriend and I decided we'd make ourselves a bathing suit out of both our mother's old dresses. Well, you know, a cotton bathing suit doesn't really last too long, doesn't really take to the water too well. But anyway, we thought we were pretty cool until we lost something.
We can thank the railway why we're here. If the railway hadn't come, there wouldn't be Westminster Junction, there wouldn't be Port Coquitlam.
We're still a major piece of the rail network across this country. So rivers and rails, as much as that was the seed that planted our community 100 years ago, it's still very integral to our community as we go forward.
We had to cross railroad tracks, and they used to have the cow catcher in front all the time, and we knew people who got caught.
I used to cut through all the time, and it was cool. You know, you just cut across the rail tracks. You need to get to the other side. The engineers would all wave at you.
But we used to put our ear down on the tracks to listen to see if a train was coming before we went across.
There was a definite distinction between if you lived on the north or the south side.
When you lived on the north side of Port Coquitlam, you know, you were not part of the group that lived in the town on the south side.
It's not something that ever bothered me too much, you know. I mean, a friend's a friend, so it never mattered where they lived.
In December 1962, the Shaughnessy Street underpass was opened, connecting the north and south sides of Port Coquitlam with a pedestrian and vehicle right-of-way. By the turn of the 21st century, the city of Port Coquitlam had grown to over 50,000 people, and to handle increased traffic, a new crossing over the railway yards was required. The Coast Meridian overpass opened in March of 2010.
The May Day Parade is something that's so uniquely Port Coquitlam.
Well, May Day is a celebration of, I guess, spring in general, and May Day goes back to ancient times.
When my kids were small, they all had to go to May Day, and they all had to have nice, pretty dresses, and it was very special.
I was a little bit younger. I did the maypole dance to kick off May Day.
My personal recollection of May Day, aside from my daughter Caitlin being a princess in the May Day.
My whole family was there to watch. They came all from Vancouver and stuff, and I just remember thinking that I was really a princess.
The staff at the arena wanted a special kind of entrance. They wanted a garden built.
And I remember the dance that we did on the opening night in our long blue dresses, all of us, and then being in the parade. And I remember we were like we were the main float. We had a May Queen.
We brought in a truckload of sand. We banked it up against the corner of the arena. We brought in potted trees and shrubs, and it all worked out really well, but they were picking sand out of the boards there for years.
I love the trails, and I don't ever want that to change about Port Coquitlam. I just did a 10K run earlier this afternoon with my friend Jenny, who I played softball with growing up in Port Coquitlam, and she was actually a fellow May Day princess. We've now come full circle, and we're old enough to choose to live here and to run the PoCo Trail. So there's something very neat about Port Coquitlam for that reason.
People know of Port Coquitlam because of Terry Fox.
Terry growing up, being raised in the 60s and 70s, Port Coquitlam was so significant in who Terry Fox became.
The relationship with Terry Fox is really close to our family. My dad was a coach of Terry when he was at PoCo Secondary.
I know we've had school reunions, you know, and we've talked about, you know, the people that came out of our school and what kind of marks they've made on the world. And all of us talk about Terry Fox and who would have thought, like knowing him in school, and then his struggles that he went through and what he did. I mean, it's amazing.
I was the last person to wear Terry's actual jersey before it was retired. Now it's retired on the wall at Terry Fox High School. Just the pride of wearing his jersey and just having his name on there, I think means something special to us in Port Coquitlam.
A young guy right from where we're from. It's so amazing, and I'm so proud for that reason to be from Port Coquitlam and of what he did and how we've treated his legacy here in Port Coquitlam.
He had no idea the mark he was going to leave behind for the world, actually. Everybody knows of Terry Fox.
You know, Terry Fox belongs to Port Coquitlam, and it's so cool to see everyone here, whether it's the residents or city council, continuing Terry's legacy.
Terry's example has, in turn, given new courage to those across the land.
But I think if our forefathers came back now and saw what the community looks like, what it feels like, the vibrancy, the commerce that we have here, I think they'd be really proud of what we've achieved in Port Coquitlam.
Port Coquitlam, even if you are not from here, stay here long enough and it'll feel like home.